Welcome back to another episode of Quick Reaction TV. Tap the like, subscribe, and rock the bell so you won't miss an episode. We got two wild stories today and a bonus one at the end, so watch to the end. Let's jump in. Quick!
Video is for entertainment purposes only. Do your own research.
This woman just joined TikTok, and she might already be the most hated TikToker in TikTok history. Let me explain. So her name's Casey, and Casey is unemployed, living in Florida with her parents, and one day in 2005, life drops a bomb on her. She's pregnant. Now, why is this a problem for Casey? Well, not only is she unemployed, but she's also only 19 years old. She ain't ready for all this. So she decides, I'll just give the baby up for adoption. But Casey's mom, who we'll just call Casey's mom says absolutely not. So Casey has the baby, and she keeps her. And the baby's name is Baby Kaylee. So now Casey and Baby Kaylee live at home with Casey's parents. But here's where we run into problems. According to Casey's friends, Casey is a little jealous that all her friends get to be normal 19-year-olds and get to go out and party and stuff, while Casey is stuck at home taking care of a baby. So then over the next few years, Casey starts lying to her parents about having a job. She'll tell them, I gotta go to work. And her mom will watch Baby Kaylee while Casey leaves and goes off to party with her friends. These are actually some pictures of her partying. There's another picture of her partying. You get the idea. And to keep up the lie to her parents that she has a job, she starts stealing from people, from her friends, from her family. She's taking money from her mom's purse. She's forging checks, all kinds of stuff. Plus, she keeps making up lies to get other people to babysit for her. I mean, she clearly no longer wants to be a parent. And eventually, she, unfortunately, gets her wish. Because it's now 2008. And one day, Casey tells her parents she's going on some work trip and that she's going to leave Baby Kaylee with a nanny. And this all seems pretty normal behavior from her at the time. But then, Casey suddenly just disappears. Like she doesn't come home, and her parents haven't seen her in a while. And they start to get a really bad feeling that something terrible happened. Then a month goes by, and Casey's parents get a letter saying the car Casey had been driving was impounded. So Casey's dad, who we'll just call Casey's dad, her dad goes to pick it up. And when he gets to the impound lot, something immediately is very wrong. Because there's a really strong odor coming from the trunk of the car. And there's nothing of importance in the trunk right now, but it smells like there had been a body in there. Now, at some point during all this, Casey finally comes home, and Baby Kaylee is not with her. And that is when Casey's mom freaks out and calls the police.
My daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. She just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
And so police bring Casey in and they question her, and she tells them, I left Kaylee with a babysitter, and the babysitter must have taken her. Her name is, Zanny the Nanny. And police are like, your daughter's been missing for 31 days? Why didn't you call us? And she tells them, I've been doing my own research. And so they ask her where Zanny the Nanny lives. And Casey takes them to an apartment building and points at an apartment and is like, she lives there in that apartment. But when police look in the windows, the apartment is completely empty. And not only is it currently empty, but no one had lived there for 5 months. And no one by the name of Zanny the Nanny had ever lived there. Because Casey never even had a nanny. She lied. And so, bam, police arrest her. Here's her mugshot. But the story's not over, because we gotta get to why TikTok hates her so much. So anyway, this story immediately blows the up. Like, it's dominating the news, not just in Florida, but nationwide. Every news outlet is talking about it. People want to know what happened to Baby Kaylee. And so thousands of volunteers from all around form search teams to go out looking for her. But unfortunately, they don't find anything. Now, here's what's really crazy. We know that Casey had disappeared for a whole ass month. So there's a month of time in her life unaccounted for. And what did Casey do during that month she went off the grid? Well, that's where it gets interesting. Because at one point, before baby Kaylee goes missing, someone at Casey's house, we don't technically know who, but someone uses the home computer to search for very specific terms like chloroform and neck breaking. Then, 2 days after baby Kaylee had gone missing, Casey asks her neighbor if she can borrow a shovel. She also, at one point, steals a checkbook from one of her friends and she goes shopping. Now keep in mind, her baby is gone. According to her, baby Kaylee had just been stolen by her nanny and Casey uses this time to steal a checkbook and go shopping? Not only that, but she's also hanging out with her boyfriend every night and she never mentions to him that her baby was just stolen by a nanny or say that anything had happened to her daughter. She doesn't seem worried or sad at all. In fact, quite the opposite. She's going out to bars and clubs with her friends, drinking and partying. At one point, she enters a hot body contest. She goes and gets a new tattoo. Like your 2-year-old kid is missing and you haven't told anyone, not even your parents, and you're out partying and getting new tattoos? Like it's no wonder the internet's mad at you. And so this tomfoolery goes on for about 31 days before she finally returns back home to her parents' house. And that's where we saw her mom call the police. And that phone call from her mom, that was the first time the police had been notified that baby Kaylee was missing. So, it's just a little suspicious, right? Oh, but it gets worse. From there, police investigate, and they look at her car, and the trunk of her car tests positive for chloroform and human decomposition. I mean, there's just so much, I guess, technically coincidental evidence that some foul play went on. But yet, despite that, Casey still insists that baby Kaylee is probably still alive somewhere out there. She's just missing. And so people continue to look for her. But then, several months later, they get some inevitable news. One day, a utility worker is out in a wooded area a little less than a mile from Casey's parents' house, and he comes across a bag. And that bag, sadly, has Kaylee inside. And she has duct tape over her mouth, meaning she had been murdered. And so then, fast forward a few years. It's now 2011. And this whole thing goes to trial, with Casey being accused of murder. And of course, she pleads not guilty. And her lawyer actually ends up being a pretty good lawyer. And he argues that Kaylee was never kidnapped, that the day she allegedly went missing, she actually accidentally drowned in the family pool. And that Casey's dad, I guess he didn't want to look neglectful, so he covered it up and made it look like someone kidnapped her? And she later makes a very different argument, but in court, that's what Casey's lawyer argues. So, believe what you want. Anyway, so eventually the jury deliberates and they come to a decision, and keep in mind, 40 million people are watching this verdict live on TV. And so the jury comes out and they read the verdict and they find Casey not guilty. And of course, people are pissed and fights break out and people are protesting. They can't believe she got away with this. And so then 14 years go by and it's now 2025. And for whatever reason, Casey decides to join TikTok.
This is my first of probably many recordings on a series that I'm starting.
And even though she was found not guilty of unaliving her daughter, TikTok users pretty much unanimously are like, hey, get the f*** off our platform, you monster, you're not wanted here. And regardless, she only has 2 videos up, but she has since turned off all of her comments. I guess she doesn't want the hate. Now, I have no idea if she's going to actually post any more videos. I mean, she says she is, so I guess we'll see.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
Jerry.
One night, this guy comes home, and his entire house has been trashed, like someone broke in. And then all of a sudden, bam, an intruder grabs him from behind. And then another intruder pulls out a knife, and they force him to his knees. And that is when one of them pulls out a pew-pew, and he points it at the man's head, and he pulls the trigger. So the guy who pulled the trigger, his name's Billy, and he's only 15, about to be 16, and one day he's at school. And his school makes all the students do these dumb drug awareness rallies, so he's got to go there with his whole class, and it's so lame. But then, while he's there, he notices the media director, this woman, Pamela. And Pamela is 22, and Billy thinks she is fine. So they meet and they get to talking and they hit it off, and they're both really into 80s hair metal, so that's cool. And Billy and Pamela become friends and he starts crushing on her hard. But as much as Billy's in love with her, she's actually married to this guy, Greg. And Pamela and Greg have only been married about a year, and unfortunately, it's not going too well. Because one day, Pamela finds out that Greg has been cheating on her. And she is devastated. She doesn't know what to do. And she doesn't want to get a divorce. She's worried she'll lose her condo and her dog. I mean, she's worried she'll lose everything. But shortly after she discovers that affair, that's when Pamela meets Billy. And they become friends and they start hanging out. And eventually, Pamela, maybe to get back at Greg, she starts smashing with Billy. And then weeks later, this affair is still going on. And as they continue smashing, Pamela starts to get worried that Greg is going to find out, and that then he'll divorce her and she'll lose everything. So then Pamela comes up with a plan to get rid of Greg for good. And with this plan, she goes to Billy, and she starts telling him that Greg has been abusive, and that she can't divorce him because then he'll get mad and retaliate. And most importantly, she says that she just wishes there was someone who could unalive him. And of course, Billy, who's very much in love, he hears this and he agrees to be that someone. Now, Billy, he isn't really a killer. And he has a lot of trouble bringing himself to do this. So he asks his friend Patrick to come along and help him. And then Patrick agrees, and Pamela lays down a plan. And she sets an actual date for the unaliving to happen. May 1st. So then, boom, May 1st comes along. And as planned, Billy and Patrick, they break into Greg and Pamela's condo. And then they trash the whole place to make it look like a robbery. And then they both wait there in the dark for Greg to come home. And then sometime later, he does. Greg finally arrives. He parks his car, he walks in the front door, and then all of a sudden, bam, Billy grabs him from behind. And Patrick, he pulls out a knife, and they quickly get Greg to his knees. And that is when Billy points the pew-pew at Greg's head, and he pulls the trigger. And later that night, Pamela gets home, and she finds Greg there on the floor, unalived. And she pretends to be surprised, and she calls police, and the police, they start investigating. And so then weeks go by, and police so far haven't made any arrests. Now, Billy and Patrick and their friends, they aren't very good at keeping secrets. So they start gossiping about it. And word gets around school, and soon enough, one of their classmates hits up police and tells them everything. So police bring in Billy and Patrick and they question them, and these poor guys, they immediately crack under pressure and they tell police the whole thing, including that Pamela was actually the mastermind behind the murder. So now police know that Pamela's involved, but they have to prove it. Otherwise, it's just Billy and Patrick's word against hers. Now, that classmate that had hit up police and snitched also mentioned the name of this girl, Cecilia. Cecilia is also 16, she goes to their school, and she's also Pamela's student intern, so she works with her. She also just happens to be Pamela's friend, because I guess 22-year-old Pamela just likes hanging out with high school students. But anyway, police find this out and they approach Cecilia and they scare her. And she breaks down and she admits that she low-key knew about this murder plot the whole time. And in exchange for immunity, she agrees to wear a wire to get a confession from Pamela. So Cecilia meets up with Pamela, and of course Pamela incriminates herself on tape, and so boom, they arrest her. Here's her mugshot. And also, while we're at it, here's Billy's mugshot. And of course, here's Patrick's mugshot. So Pamela ends up going to trial, she's found guilty, and she gets sentenced to life. While Billy, he cooperated, and he gets sentenced to 40 years. And he only did 25, and he's out now. Well, Patrick also cooperated, and he also got 40 years. And he also only did 25, and he's out now. So, shout out to New Hampshire.
What? What? And you got to be kidding me.
You are really dumb. For real.
So this guy, his name's Phil. And Phil hates his job. He hates how he's treated, he hates how little they pay him, he hates the way his bosses talk to him. So one day, he's like, screw this, I'm gonna rob this place. Now, the place Phil works at, it isn't gonna be easy to rob. Because old Phil, he doesn't work at Chipotle, he works at Loomis Fargo, the company that drives the armored trucks to go pick up money from banks and other businesses. So Phil's been working at Loomis for over 10 years. And for 5 of those years, he's been planning this big heist where he's gonna teach his bosses a lesson by stealing millions of dollars from their vault. And so the day comes, and the timing is perfect, and Phil is ready to execute his plan. So there he is, on his shift, driving the armored truck around, picking up deliveries. And when he's done, he drives back to the company warehouse. And by this point in the day, Phil has collected millions of dollars in money drops. Not to mention, there's even more money in the vault. So Phil starts unloading all of this collected money into the vault with two of his coworkers. This guy, Dan, and this other guy, James Brown. So they're all there unloading this money. And when his coworkers' backs are turned, boom, Phil pulls out his pew-pew and he points it at them and he forces them on the ground. And they're all like, "Man, what the fuck, Phil?" But whatever, Phil handcuffs them and puts shackles on them. And then he starts to take the cash out of the vault. And he loads it into an unmarked company van. 2 hours later, he's loaded all the money he can. About a half-ton worth of cash. And once the van is full of money, Phil forces Dan and James Brown into the back. Then he goes to the surveillance room and he finds all the security footage from that day. Footage of him committing this crime. And he steals all the tapes, so there's no evidence of him doing it. Then he hops into the van with Dan and James Brown still handcuffed in the back. And he speeds away. Now, in this moment, Phil has made off with just around $19 million in cash, which at the time of this happening is the largest heist in U.S. history. Now, with all of the places Phil could go with this money, he first decides to drive home to his house. And there, he forces James Brown out of the van and into the house. And then he shoves him into a closet and he handcuffs him to a pipe. And he just leaves him there. Then he drives away. And poor Dan, he's still handcuffed in the back. But Phil drives as far away as he can, all through the night, about 450 miles away. The next morning, he pulls up to a wooded area in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And he forces Dan to get out of the van and he marches him down the side of a hill. And there, he just handcuffs him to a tree. And then he drives away and he heads to a storage facility about an hour away. And there, he had rented a storage unit using a fake ID about 4 years ago. I told you he had been planning to do this for a long time. But once he's at the storage unit, he starts unloading all the money he stole into it. The next morning, Phil is long gone, and he's taken a little bit of that money with him. And he's on a bus headed to Mexico where he plans to start his new life. While poor Dan is stuck out in the woods, handcuffed to a tree. But after some maneuvering with a Swiss Army knife, he's able to escape, and he finds a park ranger. And then they call police, who are able to rescue James Brown, who is still handcuffed in the closet in Phil's house. Now, almost $19 million, that's a lot of money. In fact, it's so much money, that means the FBI has to come and take over the case. And so they put out information to law enforcement all over the country that they're looking for this guy, Phil. Meanwhile, Phil, he's just chilling in a suburb of Mexico City, trying to lay low. And there, he opens several bank accounts under fake names, and then he's able to make a bunch of trips back and forth from Mexico City to North Carolina to retrieve his stolen money from his storage unit little by little. And it sounds crazy, but it seems like Phil's plan is actually working. Until 5 months go by. And Phil, he's at the US-Mexico border, he's trying to cross, because he's on a trip to pick up some of his stolen money from that storage unit. And while he's at the border, a customs agent starts asking him standard questions. Like, where are you traveling from? How long are you staying? Stuff like that. And Phil, for some reason, he starts to get a little attitude with her. Like, mind your own business, lady, damn. So this customs agent, she pulls him aside and runs his ID. And what do you know? Boom. The name he's using comes back as having been flagged as an alias for the man wanted for stealing almost $19 million from his former employer. And so, kapow, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. I guess he refused to look at the camera, so they had to hold his head up. Anyway, so then the feds find his storage unit with all the money in it, and in that unit they also find the tapes with all the security footage on it showing him committing the crime. Womp womp. So then Phil goes to trial, he's found guilty, and he's sentenced to 25 years in prison. And he actually served 22 of them, and he got out a few years ago. So, shout out to Jacksonville.
There it is, Quik Crew. Thanks for chilling to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe so we can do it again. Let me know how y'all feel about story 1, Casey and her baby. Story 2, the marriage triangle. Or story 3, the $19 million heist. Remember, keep God first, respect yourself, and remember to forgive. And I'll see you in the next vid. Quik